So I know we want to hear some reports from what's been happening in the breakout groups. Shh. But I have requested a little bit of time to do I hope, what will be an instructive and interesting exercise with you. It's not a fishbowl, so it'll be done with a partner. And it's called a structural constellation. So it's an attempt to access a kind of knowing that is available to us if we turn toward it. So I think the best way for you to understand what you'll be doing is to watch it being modeled by a couple of people. So we'll do that, and then you will need to actually first get a partner, somebody you're going to work with. Just at your table, anybody, it'll be okay. And I'm going to ask my MatrixWorks co-facilitator, Sarah, where are you? Okay, and Greg to come and model. And we'll need one more mic. So you'll be partners with this. And it's about standing in the place of something. And the two things that I will ask you to stand in the place of are, the first is yourself as an individual, and the second will be yourself as a member of the collective. So decide who wants to work first.
You go first.
Okay. So, Sarah, just stand where you are and face Greg? Yeah, face Greg. It's fine. Because he's going to be your witness, and then he can do the exercise. So would you take one step to the left, and in this place, imagine that you are standing in the place of individuality, a kind of autonomy, a kind of uniqueness about yourself, who you are, your hopes and fears and realizations. And just notice what arises in your awareness and your thoughts or feelings. And if you would speak that out loud, what are you experiencing standing in the place of the individual?
From this place of being an individual, I feel strong alone, as if I can and must be able to accomplish every task.
Okay, yeah, and see if there's anything else. It's just whatever arises for you. Like, are there any feelings that come or any wisdom that comes?
You know, it feels familiar and lonely.
A little bit lonely. Yeah. Okay, and now take a step to the back, just behind you, and that'll be, we'll just call that the neutral place. And then come back forward a step, and this time step to your right. And in this place, you are a member of the collective, a decentralized collective. And what happens here?
I start to become aware of the energy around me, on all sides of me.
So your awareness gets a little broader.
Much broader.
Much broader.
Much broader.
And how is that for you, to have broader awareness?
It feels supportive.
Okay. Is there anything else?
there's something about Greg witnessing this process, that as if he's witnessing this on behalf of the entire collective.
So he's kind of standing in for
feels
the
supportive
collective.
and also more empowering.
Okay, the final step is that you explore, can you have a foot in both worlds? Yeah. Can you you have long legs. And give that intention just a moment to come alive in you. I am an individual, and I am a member of a collective.
I can recognize and honor my uniqueness and feel a part of something much bigger.
Yes, I think. Let's see if there's anything else that you discover from this little exploration.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I see. It feels like something's percolating, but it hadn't quite surfaced. Okay, you and Greg trade places, please.
Okay. Just microphone swap.
No, I want you on the other side. That's the working side. And now Sarah is the witness.
Okay.
And take a step to your left, please, Greg. And in this place, you access what it is to be an individual.
Yeah. So my experience, it has to do with a direct understanding. So my experience has to do with a direct understanding. The song "Only I Can Hear," the mathematics that that I know directly.
Yeah.
Maybe other people know it, but I know it directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a real direct experience.
Yeah.
Of yourself.
Right. But with that comes a kind of a burden. Because now I have this call. The music is calling, and I don't know how to get there.
Yeah. It feels like a little not frustration, but a little kind of bewilderment. Or
the quality for me is longing.
A quality of longing. Yeah, and that's so understandable because living systems find their fulfillment in the next level of complexity. So there's a longing, and maybe this is a good time to step back, one step, to neutral, and then come back forward and step to your right. And stand in the place. That's that Tai Chi showing. Stand in the place of being a member of the collective. And what arises for you there? Here you belong.
Yeah. So there's a feeling that I remember that I can ask for help.
Sooner than later.
Yes.
Yeah. That you're not alone.
That I'm not alone. Yeah,
that you're not alone.
Yeah. So there's a sense in which I can rest in my being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a quality of rest.
Yeah.
And maybe
being
even,
held a little bit.
Yes, and perhaps even a sense of less efforting.
Yeah.
More resting.
More being rather than doing.
Yeah, more being. Yeah. And maybe even more relating.
Yeah.
Yeah, more relating, more being. Yeah, excellent. And so then the final step, if you're willing, is to live in both worlds. As you drop into that more integrated place of the individual and the collective, what do you experience?
Well, I mean, if I put words to it, there's the kind of the longing part, and the being part.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of belonging.
Okay. All right. Yeah, belonging. Yeah, belonging to something larger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, now you can clap, please.
And thank you for being a witness.
A witness really
always changes everything.
Really helps. Yeah. So now I invite you to work with your partner, and you'll both be able to explore this. And it will be very different than what you've seen, but you've at least seen some version of it. Allow whatever arises to arise in you, and give yourself to this exploration, because it's actually the work you're doing in RChain. So I'd love to hear of a couple of responses or reports, what happened that surprised you. I want to hear from you guys. Yes?
When she became part of the collective, what did you say?
The only thing unique, when I put my foot in both the collective and individual, something popped out of my mouth, and I said, I feel like I could grow a tree.
Wow. You became a living system. Beautiful. Anything else that you would share? How about you?
So when I stayed alone, I felt a lot of uniqueness just being in that space and being happy. But coming into the collective, there was like a diversity of uniqueness, which I feel adding my uniqueness to it is going to drive momentum and push us to a level further.
Sounds like it was very empowering for you, almost like it was a doorway to the future for you. Okay.
Yeah, for me, standing in both worlds was very uncomfortable, with a lot of dissonance and confusion in some ways. Not at all what I would say an easy place to be.
This new relationship between the individual and the collective is our evolutionary edge, and it is not comfortable. And we're going to make messes and have challenges, but it is where we're going. And I think that certainly you guys are doing it. Yeah, it's what you're living every day. So I hope this was useful for you. What happened for you?
I guess I'm a little different in that I was most comfortable in the blend between the two. It felt really invigorating and inspiring to have not just the power from being an individual and my thoughts and ideas, but the support of the collective and having that being bridged between the two. It made me feel really, really powerful.
So the last thing that I would like to share with you, and then we can return to the regular program and the reports from the breakout room, is it's necessary for me to complete with you today rather than at the breakfast in the morning. I'm being called to several other situations, and so in looking at things, it feels like that it's just it's not ideal, but it's necessary. And so I wanted to say how much I've been affected by you. It's been a life-changing experience for me to be here. And I'm sincere in saying I want to turn MatrixWorks into a co-op, and I need help. So I thought I was coming here to help you. But as life often has it, it's at least a two-way street. So I've really benefited, and I'm so grateful for meeting you individually and collectively. And I sincerely believe that the work you're doing is important. I hope that what we have brought to you in terms of some of the MatrixWorks social innovation technologies have been useful. Maybe not always comfortable, but useful, because we are humans, and so we need to keep finding ways to blend and satisfy our human needs at the same time we create new technology platforms and things that the world also needs. So how is that? Is that okay? Do you understand what I'm reflecting to you? And yeah, it's okay to say goodbye to you? Yeah? No. Oh! Well, maybe you say no and the people out in the hall would say yes. And we welcome diversity. We believe differences are gifts. So I feel like it would be incomplete if I didn't say something directly to Greg. So I'd like to do that, and I'd like for you to come and sit with me for just a minute. I don't know if you want to get a microphone.
Sure.
And I want to thank you for inviting me into this context. And I would like to say that I feel like that the work that is happening here and that you are supporting and shepherding is really world work. And I feel like you're finally living your destiny. And it brings me great joy, both as a mother and as a human being who cares about the planet. And I know that your deepest desire is to create a community that doesn't need you. That you can offer up and you can disappear yourself. And I support that. And I recognize the challenges that go along with the work that you're doing. And just in a human way, I want you to know that I'm very happy for you and very proud of you. And I just want you to continue to work on your humility and leadership and in being of service. And I don't know how it is to hear that, but I'd love to have a response from you.
Well, I mean, thank you very much. Right, I've admired you and your work for a long time. It's been quite an inspiration. I don't know how you do all that you do. It's
given I'm 108, right?
Given that you're 108 years old and you're still jetting around from China to Brazil to Berlin in any one month. So I really, it's been very inspirational but it's of course not just your individual capacity, but the work that you're doing with groups all over the world has also been a remarkable inspiration to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm grateful to find a context where we get to work together.
Yes.
That's really amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, I think, MatrixWorks needs you and what you're doing, and I think you need MatrixWorks. So we can be business partners.
There we go. But you have to be a co-op.
Yeah, right.
I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people have really found this to be a remarkable experience. And I believe that many people are beginning to see how practical this is, right? That we're just without it, we can't get where we're trying to go.
No, there will be insurmountable challenges.
Right.
Because we can't overcome being human, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want to.
And we don't want to.
Yeah,
No, we want to become fully human.
Fully human.
And unleash all human potential.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this is, I'll be here through the evening, happy to talk to anyone or, dream together.
Awesome.
And I know you'll have a great breakfast tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, part of what was going on with Makara and I, she had mentioned to me earlier that she was thinking about leaving before the brunch, and I was telling her about my own personal imagining or visioning
yes.
of the brunch, and so probably a lot of people have to go and they have busy schedules, but one of the things that I like to do, both with my day and my week and my month and my year, is to kind of go back over it and digest the experience. And it's kind of useful to do that with others when you're actually digesting. You're literally eating.
Eating together.
You're eating together. And when we eat together, maybe it's possible to share like one crisp moment that stood out. And that way the whole group gets to digest the group's experience, and that's kind of what the brunch was set up for. I know that Makara needs to go, and so this is her completion, and I appreciate you pre-digesting for us.
Yeah, we've started the digestion process, and
like the queen bee, right?
Yeah. All right. I feel complete, and truly, it has been a life-changing experience for me, and I want to continue our journey. Okay. All right. You can clap for us. And invite the scared ones to come back in.
So I was scribing for the software repo process, and we didn't talk too much about actual software repo process. We touched on it a little bit, but we did have some very interesting discussions, and the team thinks that probably the most important thing that I should mention is what's going to happen with the ROC Rev exchange when mainnet launches. Everybody knows that we're going to be exchanging ROCs for Rev, but I feature that nobody actually knows about the mechanics of how that's going to happen. So I'm going to try to outline what that's going to look like. And Kyle, Nash, keep me honest if I say something wrong, okay? All right, excellent. So what's going to happen is, right now we have a list of Ethereum addresses, right? The ROC token is the ERC20 token. So there is a list of Ethereum wallets that have some amount of ROC against them. When we create the Genesis block for RChain, that Genesis block is going to include a set of addresses that have amount of Rev against them. That amount of Rev and those addresses will correspond in a meaningful way back to those Ethereum addresses. And similarly, those ROC tokens will be burned. No, they will not be burned. Well, okay. What will happen to those ROC tokens?
So we will pick an Ethereum block height. And when that block occurs, if you own ROC in that block, you get Rev in the Genesis block. After that, you will still be able to trade ROCs, but you will never get Rev for them. So I don't know why you would, but there's no point in burning them.
Okay, right.
Someone may find it interesting to collect them.
Does that make sense? What does that mean for way?
There will be a way to convert an Ethereum key to an RChain key. And the converted key will own the Rev in the Genesis block.
Does that make sense? So there'll be a way to convert Ethereum keys to RChain keys, and those RChain keys will have the rev.
So will you just send like a 0 ETH transaction with data in it to get? No. Just okay.
We will pick a block height, and at that point, everybody that has ROC tokens and the addresses associated with those ROC tokens will get an equal amount of rev.
It's like a no more bets call at a craps table.
One thing to mention, this was also voted on last October, and the resolution for that vote was the conversion should be automatic. This is a mechanism for automatic. So this is in line with the co-op's already voted on proposition.
Hey, okay, great. So if I understand, it's almost going to be like a fork, where at some Genesis block, well, I'll end up with, after that Ethereum block, rows and an equal number of revs, right? So mechanically, it's kind of similar to a fork. Will I be able to use the old rocks for anything? Gotcha. What? So that needs to be then. So that needs to be really clearly communicated on like what the block is, etc. Because you could imagine the value of the rocks at some certain block are going to go from here to completely here, and a number of people could still get scammed, like thinking that, oh, these are valuable, and then all of a sudden they're worth like absolutely zero. So like all kinds of resting orders and exchanges, like there just needs to be a lot of communication to like stop a lot of collateral damage and like people getting scammed.
There will be a lot of information on the RChain co-op website, on all of the channels, that this is the date, this is the block height. After this, rocks will be effectively not have any value. It's a one-time, yep.
No, they won't get burned. They just won't trade for, there's a one-time conversion to rev. And if you don't want them, I guess you can burn them, or you can give them to me.
I talked to kind of Nash about this. I also kind of have shared John's concern and think actually that there's a good chance that someone won't know about the block height and won't be notified, and then they may like move their keys, move their rocks to a new address, and delete their old key. And also like, I'm not sure, do you have any plan at all for people who might lose their key or not know about the switch? Or like the fact that the market is going to have to trade from, the price of rock to zero around this deadline?
We're going to blast it out. Caveat emptor.
Well,
no,
I don't really believe that you're going to be able to notify everyone. It's kind of a high bar.
We don't need to notify them, right? Like they get their rev automatically.
It's the sale of rocks after the conversion that's a problem. After.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think if you move them afterwards and you like don't know about the block height thing.
Why are you buying rocks if you don't know about the block height thing?
Well, I mean, people already bought them. They might just have checked out for now.
Well, then they will still get them.
Unless they lose their key.
Well,
we can't help if they lose their key.
Yeah, but there's one thing. It's one thing to lose the key that you have coins on. Another to lose the key that you didn't think was being used for anything.
I don't see how this is a problem. That I just don't.
Well, losing your key means you lose whatever's against that key.
So you could have made. There is like you could have systems
you're being a
where.
Troll. Stop it.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. I mean, I had a conversation with like Nash and everyone about this, like over lunch, and I just know that like there will be people who won't know and will just like.
So we don't want to pick a block height that's really far away from the Mercury launch. That would not be good, right?
I mean,
so I think
it's just like the fact that it's a one-time event, and basically if it's a one-time automatic thing, as opposed to like a manual over time thing, means that people will maybe not know what's going on because things are happening without their intention, possibly.
No, Vlad's point is that that's not his point. His point is that someone might be living in a cave and not hear about this and somehow have internet access and use that to transfer their rocks and then delete their key without ever having heard about this block height.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
think that's a big concern.
I think it's completely realistic, you know?
So that would be an opportunity for them to become a member and come out of the cave.
Yeah, but, like what cost, right?
Well, at the cost of like the opportunity cost that are missing by being in the cave.
Well, all their rocks or whatever.
Whenever one of these things happen, there's always the question of what happens to rock that's on the exchanges. Obviously, the exchanges would have to participate or in some manner to give back the rev to the owners.
What was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, he has a valid question.
I think the question was the exchanges and getting the revs to the owners.
Yes, if you have rock and it's not in a key you control, but it's on a key an exchange controls, the exchanges will need to coordinate getting you your rev. Just like they need to coordinate giving you your rock right now if you request it.
No pun intended. Okay. Well,
Yeah, I think the analogy was it's not unlike a fork.
Yeah, but people lose money in those events like very reliably, right?
Yeah. Obviously, big issue, and we're going to have to continue to have this discussion. But for right now, we should probably kind of move on to
Yes.
the next, and then yeah.
So we were discussing cooperative governance and some of the problems that we've been having. We were talking about communications and people being not having good communication. We decided it was more of a question of not a communications problem, but a question of coordination. There's a lot of different tools that people have to communicate. There's 20 different channels in Discord or something like that. There's the Telegram channel. Maybe people coming in to the co-op, they're going to be thinking, where do I come into this process? I don't know where to go. They just drop out. You know, what do I do to help out? And there's not really a good system for voting. As far as with the logo. Also, if for members to coordinate, there is a mechanism in the bylaws to overturn a decision by the board of directors, but it is quite hard for members to communicate. But we did come up with not just identify problems, but I thought it was a very good discussion because we came up with some solutions. One of the things we talked about was having a centralized decentralization. Ian was talking about this, not this Ian, not in the form of a command of control, but having some kind of just a centralized site, probably members.rchain.com or .coop, maybe a WordPress site where people could go to receive updates on a maybe a daily basis. We talked about using some kind of app for voting. People even talked about like a smartphone app. I'm not sure if that got off the ground. Peter from Resonate was talking about Lumio, this project, this open source tool that they use. It came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement, and it apparently works very well and is quite customizable. And we also talked about creating a new member committee to welcome new members. And right now all the members have to be greeted by someone to do the KYC, but this member committee could take that over and welcome new members. Maybe do it on a geographical basis. So if there's, if you're living in New York and someone else comes to New York, you meet with them in a Skype call or whatever and welcome them in. Also, one other thing that we talked about was committees. There's a sense that maybe people aren't, there are these committees that are functioning, but maybe people don't know what they're doing, don't know how to get involved. And we would like to have all committees have a reporter, someone that reports what the committee is doing, and a greeter, someone that greets new people into the committee. Yeah, to get, and possibly a leader as well. So that was that was a lot of what we discussed. Peter, do you want to add anything?
Just drew a pretty simple visualization. We have the whole community, we have directors, we have committees. Inside committees, maybe working groups. Out here we see like 2 working groups have formed, and then over time they realize that they have a common interest, which becomes a new committee. You may have a working group that's just kind of floating. You may have a working group that's transitory. And then, as you mentioned, having an official greeter and a reporter to report back to wherever is necessary, whether it's inside the committee or going up to the directors. And then just a very simple list of all of these organizations so that when you go through the onboarding process, you can see like, what's your interest and who do you have to contact? And that's pretty much it.
One last thing I wanted to add was that Megan actually was creating an Excel spreadsheet with names on it and email addresses for people that wanted to kind of communicate. Just another way for members to communicate, maybe outside the official confines of communication channels.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about this chart a little more. So what he's illustrating here, the directors at the top, we have 9 directors that are already part of the existing co-op governance. These 3 committees that are already seated. But we're talking about adding more impromptu groups, whereas the committees each have a charter and they all publish an agenda before their meetings and minutes after the meetings. The working groups are much more impromptu. So if there's a group of members that wants to get together around a particular issue, they're free to do that, and the co-op will support their doing that and give them a means that the group can communicate back to the greater whole, what they're working on. So far, the best touchstone that's helped our coordination through the history of the co-op has been the 11 a.m. Wednesday debrief. So that's something we've been doing consistently, not just for the lifetime of the co-op, but even Greg has been doing this for years, every Wednesday at 11. So we're looking to have these groups report during that 11 a.m. Wednesday debrief. The committees will report what they've done during the week, and working groups will also be featured, what they've been doing during the week. And then for new members, people just joining the co-op, they will have a live one-on-one interaction with a greeter or a welcomer who will help them do their KYC. And that person will also help answer some questions and help them to connect, to find a little bit about them and their interests and direct them who in the co-op or what groups that they can join. So, any questions about this so far? Sound good? Okay. All right.
Is someone at the co-op governance designing a member dashboard for this new member committee?
So we've definitely recognized the need for better communication tools or apps. And because we have so many developers and nerds, that's the first place where our heads go, like, hey, I can make an app for that. But we need something, first in the short term, this is something that we can start now. And perhaps in one of these working groups, Nathan, you can bring together some people to get some ideas or requirements together for such an app. But
I have a different recollection of what happened. My recollection is that Jeremy is making a page called members.rchain.coop, and Megan is taking charge of the working group for reading, and we have another working group which Kathy is taking charge of. We're talking about long-term governance tools. And so we will publish some ideas of what the requirements might be and what the technologies might be involved in that.
yes, so during our breakout session, in that breakout session, we actually started creating a couple of these working groups. And on the technical end, we do have a site which is being created now, which is members.rchain.coop. That will be a place where you can go to see a layout, a description of these different groups and how you can connect with them.
It was discussed hiring a communications director. Where are we at with that?
So in the past 24 hours, well, we didn't talk about it much during the breakout group, but I still support that idea. And so far, the conversations that I've had about that role of a communications director, something that the requirements would be put together by the nominating committee, that we would actually advertise externally as well as internally for that role, and that the nominating and governance committee would review those resumes and decide that hire. I'm doing my best to make it happen, and when we have the support of the other directors or officers, then it's a done deal.
Hi, so our group discussed strategic relationships. And so first we wanted to really think about what we wanted out of strategic relationships. So we really wanted to think about the value that comes back to the co-op, right? And creating cycles of virtual value creation. So we want them to be serendipitous, deliberate, and practical. So one of the examples that came up about serendipity was sort of Kenny's coffee, Uber driver, serendipitous, right? That's possibly an opportunity. And so it's incumbent upon the membership also to be involved in that process where they're reaching out, evangelizing, thinking, talking, and then finding a process where that energy is channeled back towards any one of the strategic partners that the co-op is in partnership with. And this isn't written down, but we really wanted to talk about, just to be clear, what the strategic partnerships are currently. There's Reflective Ventures, there's RChain, there's Pythia, and there's Pyrofex. And so we're also thinking about a fourth, and I'll mention that as we go along. We also want folks to keep in mind that these deals take a lot of work and time to complete, as this is new territory. The framework for a deal will change based on the type of company that we're looking to partner with. And so a deal with a co-op is going to look differently than a deal with a C Corp. And so that's something, or a government institution, if you will. So that's something to keep in mind, that the progress of these deals, as we go, we can learn from the experience and perhaps template, something, codify what we learn. And the objective there is to share that experience across all of the strategic relationships so that we can start to really nail down the process with some efficiency. One of the key issues that we had with some of the strategic partnerships was communications. And so that's a theme that sort of, you know, we see it across several channels, or whether that's governance or, you know, the lack of communication tools that are available to vote, whatever that case may be. So what the strategic partners all agreed upon was that we want to make sure that we adhere to some sort of policy in communicating deals, whether that's, you know, first to the membership or whether that's what the update is. There may be some sort of differences deal by deal. And you know, the thought there is that we have to be dynamic in thinking about things. There could be issues around confidentiality, whatever that may be. But just as a general policy, we would like the different strategic partnership deals to be communicated to the membership, and for the membership to be continually updated on the status of those deals. So we also discussed strategy implementation. So really discussing what that process is. And like what was shown here, it's a bit of coordination, right? And so while if you think of these three circles perhaps as, you know, the different partnerships that we have currently, some of these smaller circles could be working groups that perhaps would, you know, be member driven, that would be able to help coordinate on some of these items. And so it's going to be, again, an active membership that's going to drive value for the co-op as a whole. One of the things that we were talking about was also failing fast, right? And so having a really good feedback loop. And you know, an example of that is what occurred toward the end of the year, right? Which is that, you know, probably the co-op failed in communication, right? And so then we had to learn very quickly how to address that and correct it, right? And so that process of failing fast, that's something that we would, you know, we all want to embrace because this is all new and we haven't figured it out yet, but we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can, that we, so that we learn very quickly from the past and that we do it with a transparent efficiency. Just in terms of transparency, we also discussed creating a channel in Discord where we could perhaps identify potential partners and then come up with a rubric that could allow for a member to be able to figure out whether this is something that makes sense for RChain, how to engage, how to perhaps you know, acquire business requirements, and then figure out how to communicate that back to a strategic partner or the co-op. Another thing that we talked about was how do we partner on deals that are public good sort of deals, right? Not necessarily a company that we may want to invest in, but maybe a social good, right? And so the co-op was thinking about ways that we could sponsor those kinds of projects. So that's something that we're working on currently. And then how do we partner with academia? And so one of the fourth partnerships that's going to develop will be RChain research. And so that was mentioned on one of the weekly debriefs a while back. But it's going to focus on the RChain roadmap with more of a strategic lens ahead of the current release. So thinking about 2 to 3 releases ahead. Also, it's going to be focused on consensus research, organizing research on sort of impactful computer science, so something like quantum calculation and computing, the ladle algorithm, AI, energy, and gamification. So part of the goal there is to create sort of this revolving door between research and development. And you know, take an opportunity to perhaps have researchers sit in with developers, and so we can get some of that sort of their ideas out of their head and into sort of the practical hands of developers, and build a good relationship that way. And so and as part of sort of going out and reaching out to academia, we're going to be, we the co-op is going to be partnering with universities that were influenced in the development of row calculus. And so Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, and really going out and cementing those relationships and getting those people who are thinking on the cutting edge about RoCalc and getting them into relationships and partnerships with developers in a co-op. And one of the last things that we talked about was utilizing the proposed incubation space for lectures that would then attract academics and developers. So that was sort of the key points. If there was something else that I may have missed that someone would like to add in, well, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like some reports back from the other breakout sessions. So we have the breakout on trademarks, on roadmap. If representatives from those groups can come take the mic. Roadmap.
Derpy. All right. So, Roadmap and Requirements Working Group, we came up with a bunch of questions and then attempted to answer them. So, how do we edit the website? Where is the dev stand-up? Like these are some unanswered questions for us. We can answer them at the end, I suppose. So, who's going to be on this Roadmap and Requirements Group, which we have figured out? I'll be working on it, and I think a couple other people will be working on it. So here are the responsibilities of this roadmap working group. Maintaining, updating docs on our architecture docs, which are readthedocs.io. Timestamping the updates, communicating that the docs will be updated in the future on other channels, and hash the roadmap milestone date and publish it to the Ethereum blockchain. That would actually encourage people to believe that we have integrity, since we say that we're going to do something and then we can prove that we do it. So recording in the roadmap and representing that this is a potential sort of overlap with what Kevin just said about the business partners would do. Our other question is, how do we communicate to a group beyond ourselves on the website and inside a particular comm channel? And then for particular roadmap stuff, these are the things that are in the current functioning Mercury roadmap. This is coming down the way for our future release for Venus. We don't really have everything else outside of Venus is sort of hazy. And so our question as the working group is, how do we get commitments on long-term work? Another responsibility of this working group is to have meetings with the dev team periodically. So to have a point person on the dev. And then to leverage the community to increase verifiability of milestones. So this is where we sort of eat our own dog food here. So our sources of legitimacy and verifiability from a roadmap perspective, here's a bunch of them. Maintaining an audit of the roadmap. Now since July, August, it says that this is what's going to get done. This creates legitimacy for the whole process. So here we listed a bunch of parameters, which will be included. Here are some of the Mercury deliverables. So there are a bunch of stakeholders here, Pyrofex, and then obviously sort of Kent. This got autocorrected. This is Meta and Ed have the current state of the architecture documents, and it's this working group's responsibility to get those architecture documents from these central repositories, which in this case are sometimes people and or the RChain website, and sort of coalesce them. So, and also Greg has produced documents, so we're going to be getting those as well. Here's actually some clarity for those questions that we posed in the beginning of this presentation, which is the biggest shift between Mercury and Venus is that Ladle will be more fleshed out, the Ladle algorithm. Greg has sort of lectured a lot on this, and I'm not sure where the central repository for Ladle algorithm is, but that's sort of our responsibility to figure out. It's on the dev site, but we're going to have to get that. And then we got a unique question and answer system between Greg and Vlad, which was like watching Oprah interview Obama or something. So here it is. So we have a general sense of what's going to be in Mercury, and feel free to interrupt me if or if this is wrong. So a metered row calculus virtual machine, row calculus, Rolang, which compiles down into row calculus, a scalable consensus protocol of some sort, and then a naming space, which at the time we didn't understand, but we can replicate into a row calc VM. So then we went into the namespace thing, and here's a whole thing on the namespace. So rather than confuse us, what I'm going to just say is there is, I wrote it down here. Okay, so with namespaces, I think the best way to say it is that we're going to have to serve up a definitive document because there's basically a lot of the namespace stuff. Okay, here it is from Greg. So Greg says, but this is going to confuse a lot of people. So where's my... Okay, here's his the TLDR. Since you have a namespace group application, you can add metadata and what kind of throughput and storage capacity and storage and compute capacity to the nodes. And this is a service level agreement that allows you to select your validators from a validator pool. And you'll have to provide liquidity and some other things that are still to be determined. And then in that note, so as you can see, this is sort of an involved thing. So in that discussion of nodes and validators, we are setting the goal to have 1,000 nodes by launch. So that's a definable milestone for us. So we can publish that call on the Ethereum blockchain, and someone can just call our hash, and that's our milestone. So what is a node? For those of us who are currently using nodes on other chains, the main software, the short answer is, the short answer, and the longer answer is we're going to get back to you on what the future requirements are, but here's from Nash and Greg and Meta. So there are software and hardware requirements that we're releasing this via Docker. So you could run Docker on a Raspberry Pi or a giant data center or a bunch of data centers. So we're going to get back to the community on what the stacks are that are necessary to run the Docker expression on these nodes. Nash has said that we're first primarily focused on Docker images and then secondarily on RPMs and DMGs. We're hoping to be flexible with people because obviously it's better, but we don't necessarily have the fixed requirements, so that's subject to change. And the other thing that's on the the other thing that's do I still is this done? Okay, cool. Everyone's excited. Okay, good news. So we spoke about what is going to be delivered, and this is why these things sort of have to be boiled down. So one of the things that Greg said, which is actually here, I'll start down here. Well, what are the things that won't change, right? So the things that won't change is that we're looking to do high throughput and scalability, and we aren't going to compromise on the compute model. So everyone's claiming throughput and scalability and 40,000 transactions a second. Now the distinction that we're going to make, and Greg can tackle me if this is incorrect, but we're promoting a 40,000 transaction for COM event transactions, which are different from ledger transactions, but are sequential to that happening. So we have a variable granularity in our data structure that you're sending over a channel that can be an entire ledger, and that's because the ledger is on the VM. So if Bitcoin is just storing a ledger and Ethereum is storing is writing virtual machines, and the ledgers are on those virtual machines, we're sort of, the difference is that we're building a different computational machine, and so therefore these variable granularities that are taking place sort of in the COM event will then, after we can figure that out in like real time with real nodes, these 1,000 nodes, we'll be able to figure out the second step, which is the ledger transactions. And this is describing what that COM event is. So Kevin and I are going to be responsible for delivering a tutorial on how to set up these nodes. So a high school student could not only read a one-pager or index card with Rolang instructions on it, but also understand how to deploy a node. And then here's the other sort of fundamental thing for us that I could share with you. So it's just sort of like the thing that Greg continues to repeat, which is that RChain has a computational model that supports this type of sort of concurrent sharding from the beginning, and that we're not trying to bolt it onto the side, right? We got into a little bit about quantum cryptography with Greg, which was basically he's not concerned about it because here it is. In the meaning, it's about the meaning of measurement, and it happens. What's happening is that you're forcing an agreement on a common state. So that's sort of quantum mechanics. Trace minority category stuff. We'll sort of get into this. So we have an answer to the quantum cryptography breaking question that is kind of like way down in past Venus and into Sirius and the other stuff. But like that is like a definite thing. So if I have a quantum network with, you know, that distributed out entangled pairs and we have an answer for that. So, and Credit Suisse has been running these type of equations, these type of models since 2004. Here's our definite deliverables. These are our 2 commandments. RChain will never, this is like do no evil for Google. RChain will never ship something without shards, according to Vlad, and will never ship something that will not have formal verification. Are there any arguments to those points? I think that's enough for right now. I think the other thing is, yeah, obviously, if we could figure out some more things to roll out, that will be our killer app. That's kind of the strategic partners / roadmap situation. So these will all be published to the chain. Any questions? All right. I'll give this to Patrick. Do you need this? So the question is about what does 40,000 transactions per second mean?
I don't want you to answer that now. I want to know if there will be some material.
Yeah, there has to be material. So the initial clarification now is that there is just a distinction between 40,000 transactions a second on a ledger and 40,000 transactions a second on a COM event pool, which is a little bit different, and I think they're necessary to scale to 40,000 transactions on a ledger. Yeah. Yeah, and this working committee will be responsible to that question.
Then we got another question.
Was this recorded? Because it seems like, especially this interview between Vlad and Greg was pretty interesting. Was at a different meeting. I didn't know if it was possible.
So, sorry. Yeah, this was recorded. It will be transcribed, and it will be posted to some GitHub repository in the new member program or whatever, or wherever we're doing that.
You said maybe there should be a governance forum repo?
Yeah, there should definitely be a governance forum repo.
Any more questions? Okay, yeah, so I was in charge of scribing the trademark group, which was quite a bit more brief. So we started out by describing the importance of this trademark discussion and enforcing trademark policy. A couple of the major reasons why we would want to consider this is in the case of a contentious hard fork. So for example, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, which one is the real Bitcoin? RChain and RChain duplicate, what is the rock and roll or rock and rev, which is the real one? And also, an imposter claiming to be an official RChain source. This could come about like, a Reddit channel, for example, or also, like a scammer, during the rock redemption or something like that, saying, hey, we're the official RChain. This is how you redeem your rocks. Give us your address or something like that. So it is important to consider. It was brought up by an IP attorney in the crowd that there is a difference between a trademark and a registered trademark. The co-op does own the registered trademark on the name RChain, and the co-op also owns copyrights to the code base. So those can be enforced. It's important to note that you lose the ability to enforce a trademark if you don't enforce it. So in order to enforce it, the co-op would need to commit resources to that, and that would involve the co-op. Okay. Yeah, co-op owns it, copyrighted. Yeah, so the co-op would need to commit resources to that to monitor the channels, notify, send letters, and then take the procedural steps to, enforce that trademark policy. So how should the co-op govern the trademark policy? Because the trademark can be licensed, it could be done on a case-by-case basis, or the members could institute a policy on how to use it. And then there was a note on, visibility would help the user base to, for example, if we could see the root chain and the forks that came of it, then people can, trace that line and be like, okay, this is obviously not the real RChain because it came from left field. That's essentially it. We didn't come to a conclusion on how to do it, but we just know that it's important. So are there any questions? Let's get the man a mic. 1 second.
So I understand the part about the trademarks and enforcing that and licensing trademarks. On the code and some, model for preventing a hard fork or relating this to someone else just forking and moving forward, the code base is already.
Yeah, so the goal isn't to prevent a hard fork, it's to prevent someone from, or it's to distinguish what is RChain official and what is new fork.
And the copyright enables RChain to do that how?
The trademark does.
I know, I understand the trademark part, but you mentioned copyrights as on the code base, and I'm.
Yeah, that's just a note, to be honest.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Just like a FYI, we also have a copyright on the code base.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know how that applies to enforcing any policies, but it's there.
That was my question. Cool. Thanks.
Are any of these things currently that we have a trademark on published on a public blockchain?
You mean like the name RChain?
Are any of the things that we have a current trademark on, like the name RChain or any of our logos or any of our trademarkable things, we could just hash them and publish them to Ether quite easily?
All right, go for it.
Okay, we can do that.
Matt has got a point.
There was a comment about the code base. So the code base is licensed under Apache 2.0, which means it's free and open source, right? So anybody can take the source code and build another platform. They just can't call it RChain.
Any other questions? Oh, and by the way, no, that logo is not official on the T-shirts. We will not be enforcing anything. Sorry, Kenny.
Yeah, thanks for that, Patrick. Okay, so mine was, our working group was about Treasury. So also pretty much a pretty brief conversation. So what the current state of affairs is for the Treasury is we have a series of multi-sig accounts, but the types of value that the co-op currently holds, we hold rock, obviously, right? So the cooperative multi-sig is the largest holder of rock currently. We also hold Bitcoin in a multi-signature wallet. We also hold Ether in a multi-sig wallet, and then we also have USD in a bank account. So those are the 4 things that we have. We discussed kind of the basic management of that, which is a multi-signature account, which the signers on those accounts have to be, at this point, they have to be either directors or officers for basically fiduciary obligations, that sort of thing. And we talked about the process by which things happen on those multi-sigs. So in general, the process is at the highest level, issue/community involvement and comment. It's the highest level where something first begins. Then in an example of, let's say, an agreement, there would first be discussion. Then there might be some lower level thing like a document, a legal document between 2 parties. And then at the lowest level, there's value transfer, meaning either rock or some other type of value being transferred. So that would be the process. And if, for example, if value transfer happened before a contract or community input, that would be an abusive process. So from there, we did note that the bylaws have an auditing committee in them, which has yet to be formed. So that committee needs to be established. And then that audit committee would also work with outside auditors. So the outside auditors would check the work and work with that committee to make sure process is taken care of, as well as any other considerations. And we also did want to be clear that in terms of process, there's basically 2 ways in which process can fail: accidentally, which is most of the time, and then fraudulently. And in terms of the second one, fraud, that's why the officers and board members hold those positions, because they are currently fiduciary responsibility, which means if they do that, they either go to jail or get severely fined. So that's the process there. We also did talk a little bit about security in the sense of that this is a real concern because crypto is basically like cash, right? So there was some suggestion of possibly recruiting or hiring a security audit as well to go through best practices. And what would be the outcome of a security audit would not be a detailed list of things that the co-op does, but a list of things that are best practices that everyone should do. So this would also benefit the members to have this done, because if you hold crypto, which I would assume most of us do, then it would be good to have some best practices around that. And yeah, so that was Treasury. That was kind of the process and some action items that we have. Are there any questions about Treasury? Excellent. Okay, I think, are we to the last one? Okay, or to Jim?
So I just wanted to see if we had people who were interested in signing up for any working groups. So we have a working group for a new members working group. And anyone interested, please see Megan at this table. Could you stand up? Okay, so new member working group. And what we're looking for here are people who might want to help onboard new members. They may also be doing some of the new member verification. So new member comes, signs up for RChain, they pay their $20, they submit their ID, and they need to have a brief interview. So this would be someone who would do that short interview and also maybe answer some questions and help connect them to resources or groups within the cooperative. And we spoke about another working group, which was to come up with some requirements or specifications for future tools for voting and for onboarding. And I believe it was Kathy. Is she in the room? So Kathy, if you could stand up. And I need a little bit more description of that working group. Yeah.
So the working group we're thinking is more along like principles and implementation and the stages that those should actually belong in the co-op, and how to actually have guidelines that people can refer back to that we would present to the co-op, and that it would serve as a basis for working groups and how to communicate, or any sort of communication has been brought up as an issue. So having people on the group suggest implementation tools that the co-op can then decide which is the best practice to move forward with. There's a couple of people signed up already, but if you're interested, please come find me. We're going to start a proposal and present it to the group to get everybody's feedback.
Okay, thank you. And there was one other breakout session, which was HJ coming in remotely from the Hague, the Netherlands, and Jim Whitescarver is going to scribe a little bit and describe what happened in that session.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't scribe, but HJ went through the reward system that's been in operation, and reported the success we had in using a 3+ rule from SwarmWise, okay, which shows how collective intelligence can emerge from independent action of small groups of people, and which is supported in many ways in the collective intelligence literature. In any case, we did have some abuses where 3 people would set a budget and 3 people would issue a reward based on that work. But we need to take the responsibility for the self-regulation, or without having some central oversee section, we have to organize our, in my part of the presentation, we have to organize some kind of oversight to make sure all the different areas of operations, there's some oversight there, so that essentially if somebody tries to put something that's not in the best interest of the cooperative, or isn't that desired or whatever, they participate in the budgeting and reward system. We have to make sure somebody is looking. And if we distribute the load among us in terms of evaluating the efforts and participating in those processes, we think the system will work and it'll scale as the cooperative grows. Any questions?
So, questions about the bounty system? So it's a very active and growing bounty system that we're always looking for more oversight and improvements to. And there was a question. Vlad.
Can we be a little more explicit about what happened with the 3 people approving it and 3 people doing the work kind of illusion? Was there kind of fraud or something? Like someone say there was work done but there wasn't, or the work was really bad quality, or what are we talking? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's one case where they really didn't do anything and they got a bounty. There's other cases where the quality of the work was at issue, and this is where we need some organization. I mean, some people submit a translation and get a reward when, they did a Google Translate, they didn't really do any work, and it's a lousy translation. And we have to have processes where, we have to, translation process involves the translator and a reviewer. And we need both parts. In some cases, the translator would only get 1% of the bounty, and the reviewer would get 99% because it was a substandard job. But we don't want to, we want to have some kind of reporting review process that is rewarded. We don't need people overseeing this reward system, not getting paid for it, not getting rewarded for it, so they should get credit for that. And it should be part of the effort involved so that we don't have people getting big bounties for lousy work.
I just wanted to make a point about the system. The executive committee met and discussed that system, and there's obviously a need for oversight, and so members of the executive committee are committed to review what's happening and just making sure that what's happening is in compliance from all perspectives, financially, from a regulatory perspective. And so that was something that we just discussed, I think it was Thursday. So that's going to be ongoing, but there are going to be some changes and things to make sure that we're not jeopardizing the co-op and all the hard work that we're doing here.
Greg basically issued 1 million rocks to HJ to run a program that would spend down the Treasury and get the rock out into the public. And I guess now we have over 100 co-op, 100 active members who receive bounties from this program. And it's, so in very few months, we've scaled up to 100. And I should mention that the ambition here is to scale up to 10,000 users within a year. And Dan Connolly has created some great software, which may, we've just started, we may get improved, that makes the system very easy and very clear. And if we can organize ourselves in terms of our oversight of ourselves, I believe we can scale to 10,000. His estimate was the reward would be, about $1,000 per member that's a participant. And so he's asking for 10 million rocks to run this program with the goal of 10,000 active members participating in the bounty system within the year. You spent, I think it was 200,000, less than 200,000.
So we're going to make sure that the oversight keeps up with the growth of the program as well. And for the bounties, anyone who's receiving a bounty is a member of the co-op, and also to propose bounties, you have to be a member of the co-op. So a couple more questions, and then we're just about to begin our cocktail hour. So, minors and full nodes. We need to move on to that.
So we started off the discussion around the first thing that we need to note is that they run hardware on the internet. They are owned, that hardware is owned by node operators, be it a human or an organization, for example, mining farms. And we walked through the discussion of what is a node, what are the different types of nodes. So you've got the concept of a full node that runs all the software. They're running an implementation of the consensus protocol, and they relay blocks, change peers, validate blocks, process transactions, and serve like clients. And people trust full nodes to ensure that they're only receiving validated full blocks. Full nodes keep the blocks valid, and they have external incentives for running a full node, right? So these are not nodes that are actually mining any cryptocurrency or validate or part of the validator group, right? They wouldn't participate in stake. So why would people run full nodes? You know, we kind of did a poll in the room, and one of the things that we learned is that the motivation to run a full node a lot of times is really the node operator just wants to have a copy of the blockchain locally that they can query independently of any external service, right? So they want to know for themselves that if they process such a transaction, they can actually see that transaction in their copy of the blockchain. So that's one of the big, like a big motivator for one of the people that was running a node. I think it was Kenny. Kenny runs a node, and that's why he likes to do that, because he wants to see for himself the transactions on the chain on his local node. Another type of node are the consensus forming nodes, also known as miners. So these nodes actually participate in the proof of work. They propose blocks, they validate transactions, and they occasionally will get a reward, right, if their block that they propose is selected and it actually becomes part of the longest chain. And in the RChain ecosystem, it would be, or the RChain blockchain, it would be, they would be bonded validators where they're putting up stake and proposing a block. So that's the concept of a miner or a consensus forming node, or also known as a validator. So there's like 2 or 3 words to describe this kind of node. And, you know, when you're talking about governing node operators, we have to acknowledge that it's really up to the node operators whether they're going to accept the software, right? So the reason, why do you see forks in like the Bitcoin Cash scenario, Ethereum Classic, is because not all the node operators accepted the software upgrade or change, and so then there was a fork in the platform. So they have a decision to make, right? Are they going to continue running the instance of the node? So they have these decisions that they can make, right? So one, are they going to upgrade to new versions of software? Are they going to install patches? Are they going to continue running the instance of the node? When do they run the node? Do they run the node all the time? Do they run it some of the time? Do they run it when it's convenient? 2 basic options, right? The version of the type of software they're going to run. Are they going to participate on the RChain network? And when do they participate? And how do they participate? They have natural incentives, right? So their incentives are to stay consistent with their peers. Many of them have money at stake. They have hardware at stake. So they've purchased hardware, right, to participate in the network. So that's kind of their incentives, their internal incentives. If you don't have any peers, then you're a node of one, right? That's not a very interesting scenario. So they won't necessarily run a herd mentality, but they can be prone to a herd mentality, right? So a lot of times they will go along with what the majority of node operators will do. So they'll sometimes pick a side. They may not all node operators are going to have a strong opinion, but some of them will have a strong opinion about certain updates, certain changes to the software. What else do I have here? Let me see. So around governance of nodes, right, we want nodes to act as a check and balance for the software process. And I think this, I mean, from what I can see here, it goes back to communication as well, right? If we have a really good communication process, node operators will just plug into that, right? They will be able to communicate effectively what the changes are in the software that are coming out. They'll be able to weigh in and make a decision, right? And hopefully communicate back to us their opinion on that change that's coming and when it's coming and if they're going to adopt it. So, I mean, from my perspective and for a lot of people in the room, it resonated with, you know, the node operators kind of being an extension of the community. Even though they're not actual members, they ultimately are the RChain blockchain, right? The node operators are. So we have to include them and communicate with them as effectively as we have to communicate with the membership. What else do we have here? Let's see. So one of the things that came up as an option is that we could potentially offer 3 options, and this would be, we talked about auto upgrade, right? When auto upgrade is a kind of a slippery slope, because then potentially if you have a bad piece of code that makes its way into the code base? Do you want to have everything just automatically deployed to the nodes? And the answer is no, we don't want to do that, right? That gives too much power to the development team. We want it to remain decentralized. But an option could be is the node operators could decide if they want to go with the change, go against the change, or go with a majority decision. So that's kind of interesting if you offer them the option to say, you know, I'm going to abstain from actually voting on this change, but I'll go along with what the majority says. That's a nice way for them to kind of acquiesce to what the majority vote is on any given update. And it really is up to the node operator to determine which software processes are solid and deploy the code. And that speaks again to having a really good, transparent software specification, implementation, testing, and deployment process, right? So if our processes are really good and the engineering team demonstrates that capability and we can communicate really well as a community, then our node operators are going to have real confidence in how we operate, and they'll be able to make really good informed decisions about what they want to do with their node, right? It's just it gives them more confidence in how we are functioning. And so we talked a little bit about what node operators really want. So they want a choice when there's something contentious. They want to have a relationship with the dev team or accessibility to the development team and know who those who the development team is and have access to that. And from our perspective, having an adversarial relationship is preferable because it decentralizes power, right? So we want to make sure that there's a process that can't be corrupted because the power is very decentralized, right, in the overall development and deployment and acceptance process for the software. And then we wound up going into a little bit of the porn discussion yet again about illegal content and is the blockchain immutable. So I didn't take a lot of notes on that because I feel like that's officially now a dead horse. It's not that it shouldn't be discussed, it's just we've talked a lot about that topic during this conference. No, not really. No, it wasn't really resolved in our discussion either. Did I capture everything, Vlad? Did you want me to? We also talked about a potential node lobby, but, or a node co-op. That was also put out there. And that was kind of bantered about, and we decided, did we want to facilitate, the node operators' ability to organize, and how would that be structured? Should it be something the membership takes on? Is that something they should do independently? There was also some talk about regulatory as well that kind of got slid in there, and states and governments and how they could potentially impose regulations on node operators, and that they had a decision to make whether they wanted to run a full node depending on the local jurisdictions and what their rules are. So we had some interesting conversations around that with respects to node operator governance. What else did I miss anything, Vlad? That was good. I think what you're talking about is that we could have a variety of different implementations of the RChain node, but as long as they do the same thing, it doesn't really matter. As long as they implement the protocol. Is that what you're talking about? I don't remember that, maybe. I mean, so it is well known that you can have node software that could potentially be run in a variety of different, on a variety of different platforms and written in other languages. As long as they implement the protocol exactly the same, then it doesn't really matter. They can run the node software on the platform of their choice. Are there any questions about this? To me, it distills down, it's really simple. It feels like to me, node operators are really an extension. They're a more heavily staked member, right? It feels like to me is because they've bought hardware, they're servicing the network. For some of them, there's real financial reason to be doing it if they're mining. So it feels like they are a staked member, for lack of a better term, right? And we should make sure that our communication processes are really solid with the membership. And if we do a really good job at that, then what will happen is the node operators will just kind of come along, right? It'll just There'll be a few things we'll have to look at specifically for them, but if we can communicate with the membership effectively, I feel like the node operators will just kind of come along with that. Are there any questions? Did you have a question? Did you have a question, Nathan?
Your point is that the nodes are a staked member. I guess the follow up to that is how do we evaluate a staked member's value versus a co-op member's value, or the participation of a co-op member, or whatever?
I don't know. So I don't know that we can assign more importance to one or the other. And I don't know that it necessarily matters, right? Because I would say that we'd want to communicate with everybody equally and as effectively, right? So let's raise the bar on ourselves as much and treat everybody as if they have a stake, right? Be it an investor, be it a node operator, be it a member that has invested their time and energy, right? We have a responsibility to do the best job we can to communicate with everybody, make sure everybody understands what's coming up, what the implications are, how they will be affected, and people know where to go get that information. And with respects to nodes, like we also talked about the possibility of having node operators vote, right? But the fact of the matter is that could even be gamed, right? You could go into AWS and create a bot and spin up 1,000 nodes and have 1,000 more votes. So we decided that that was not an option that we wanted to entertain for that reason.
But all members should be encouraged to run nodes if possible.
All members should be encouraged to node runs, and help me with node testing too. Oh, you have the mic? Okay, go ahead. Or help us with node testing. Yes.
You've referred to the full nodes and also referred to miners. And in my experience with, and this is because I don't know, with other proof of stake coins, the wallet is basically where people stake. The staking wallets are kind of popular these days among proof of stake coins. Is there expected to be people who just have wallets that might have a lot of revs in them, and then other people who explicitly do something with a special application that's a miner, or are we expecting these things to be the same?
No, they're definitely different. So a miner is going to have a piece of hardware that's going to be running the RChain node software on it. If I have a wallet, that's a contract, right? That's a rev contract. So where I can hold rev and then send rev over the blockchain network to somebody else. That's very different than
I understand, but today the coins that I'm aware of that are out there that actually support staking, that happens in the context of the wallet application.
Yeah. So like that's basically because everyone just runs a fork of Bitcoin D, and basically they have Bitcoin D with the UI and a mine button. It basically is just because of the kind of genealogy of the.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's not.
I'm just wondering. So we're explicitly doing it this other way, which is an education question, then, right?
I mean, it's definitely not going to be like exactly Bitcoin D, So I don't know how different the experience is going to be, but the Bitcoin D experience is very the same everywhere for all the forks of Bitcoin. So I don't really expect it to be exactly the same UX. And because without software, you have the wallet, the mining client, and the full node all in the same package.
It's not the computational model that we want. I think it comes down to that.
Okay, I'm not sure why it's not the computation model, but okay.
Because it matters from an architect perspective.
I'm going to say that we haven't spec'd that part out yet.
Okay, but right now the plan is that
we don't know how it's going to look.
The experience is separated explicitly.
Okay, this is actually pretty simple. We don't have miners, we have validators, right? So if you want to participate, if you want to mine on RChain, you become a validator, and to become a validator, you have to put up a stake, right? The validators perform the mining operation. They validate the blocks, and they produce the blockchain. There are other people who will operate nodes that are not validating nodes, right? They don't have any control. They can only read what the validators are producing. The co-op can introduce feature requests to the software through whatever our RIP process or EIP style process is, right? So you can propose changes that you want to see the developers implement, and then eventually the validating nodes can choose to activate those features once they're implemented if they want to, right? So if a member of the co-op gets to participate in the proposal process, also wants to participate in the process of changing the protocol, you should validate, right? So you should plan to bring up a node and stake it and validate on the network, right? We want 1,000 of those people. We want 1,000 nodes, right? So we need lots of help with that between now and the end of the year. Right? If you don't validate the network, you don't have any control over what protocol ultimately gets run. Does that make sense? And no, it's not enough to have money in a wallet.
Right, so I don't just have money in a wallet, but in order to stake.
You have to validate.
In order to stake, then I take my money that I do have in my wallet and I use either another set of keys or the same keys to take that money and validate that that money is in my validating node, because I need keys in order to prove that.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like a separate wallet and validator in one?
You'll have to run the node software, which needs to have its own keys, right? So it'll need to have funds. You would put money in that wallet, and then your node would be able to stake for validation. Sorry? Essentially, yeah. It has to have.
It has only partial wallet function. In order to have keys and your.
Right. Any other questions? No, we don't have a number for that yet. Yeah. Yeah. Dash is 100 grand or something now, right? Yeah. Any? We don't know what the specs, so the question was, will the specifications for validating nodes be published? The answer is yes. We don't know what those specs are. On RChain, the validation function is not computationally bound, so it's going to basically have a really good internet connection and a fast, low latency, right? Because what we want in Casper is low latency and not, burn a bunch of CPU for the validating function. Anybody else?
Thanks, Nash.
Cocktail bar is now open.
Time for drinks.